I've been recently talking a lot with John Danaher from Brazilian
Hmm.
Jiu Jitsu fame. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
who
yeah,
that is.
yeah.
In fact,
Talk about somebody who's good at what he does. It's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And he, speaking of somebody who's open minded, the reason doing this ridiculous transition is for the longest time, and even still, a lot of people believed in the jiu-jitsu world and grappling world that leg locks are not effective in jiu-jitsu. And he was somebody that inspired by the open-mindedness of Dean Lister, who
Hmm.
famously to him said, why do you only consider half the human body
Right, right.
when you're trying to do the submissions? He developed an entire system on this other half of the human body. Anyway, I do that absurd transition to ask you, because you're also a student of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Is there something you could say how that has affected your life, what you've learned
Mm.
from grappling from the martial arts?
Well, it's actually a great transition because I think one of the things that's so beautiful about jujitsu is that it does what we wish we could do in every other area of life, where we're talking about this difference between knowledge and ignorance, right? Like there's no room for bullshit, right? You don't get any credit for bullshit. There's the difference, but the amazing thing about jujitsu is that the difference between knowing what's going on and what to do and not knowing it is as the gulf between those two states is as wide as it is in anything in human life, um, and it can be spanned so quickly. Like you didn't each increment of knowledge can be doled out in 5 minutes. It's like, here's the thing that got you killed, and here's how to prevent it from happening to you, and here's how to do it to others. And you just get this amazing cadence of discovering your fatal ignorance and then having it remedied with the actual technique. Um, and I mean, for people who don't know what we're talking about, it's just like this the simple circumstance of like someone's got you in a headlock. How do you get out of that? Right? Someone's sitting on your chest, and they're in the mount position, and you're on the bottom, and you want to get away. How do you get them off you? They're sitting on you. Your intuitions about how to do this are terrible, even if you've done some other martial art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you learn how to do it, the difference is night and day. It's like you have access to a completely different physics. Um, but I think our understanding of the world can be much more like jujitsu than it tends to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think we should all have a much better sense of when we should tap out, and when we should recognize that our epistemological arm is barred and now
Yes.
being broken, right?
Yeah.
Now the problem with debating most other topics is that most people, it isn't jujitsu, and most people don't tap out, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't, even if they're wrong, even if it's obvious to you they're wrong, and it's obvious to an intelligent audience that they're wrong, people just double down and double down, and they're either lying, or lying to themselves, or they're bluffing. And so you have a lot of zombies walking around, or zombie worldviews walking around, which have been disconfirmed as emphatically as someone gets armbarred, right, or someone gets choked out in jujitsu. But because it's not jujitsu, they can live to fight another day, right? Or they can pretend that they didn't lose that particular argument. And science, when it works, is a lot like jujitsu. I mean, science, when you falsify a thesis, right? When you think DNA is one way and it proves to be another way. When you think it's triple stranded or whatever, it's like there is a there, and you can get to a real consensus. So jujitsu for me, it was like it was more than just of interest for self defense and the sport of it. It was just there was something. It's a language and an argument you're having where um, you can't fool yourself anymore. Like there's first of all, it cancels any role of luck in a way that most other athletic feats don't. It's like in basketball, you can, even if you're not good at basketball, you can take the basketball in your hand You can be 75 feet away and hurl it at the basket, and you might make it. And you could convince yourself, based on that demonstration, that you have some kind of talent for basketball, right? Enough, 10 minutes on the mat with a real jiu-jitsu practitioner when you're not one proves to you that it's not like there's no lucky punch. You're not going to get there's no lucky rear naked choke you're going to perform on someone who's Marcelo Garcia or somebody. It's not going to happen. And having that aspect of kind of the usual range of uncertainty and self-deception and bullshit just stripped away was really a kind of revelation. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful thing that accompanies whatever other pursuit you have in life. I'm not sure if there's anything like jiu-jitsu where you could just systematically go into a place where you're that's honest, where your beliefs get challenged in a way that's conclusive.
Yeah,
I haven't found too many other mechanisms, which is why it's we had this earlier question about fame and ego and so on. I'm very much rely on jiu-jitsu in my own life as a place where I can always go to have my ego in check, and that has effects on how I live every other aspect of my life. Actually, even just doing any kind of, for me personally, physical challenges, like even running, doing something that's way too hard for me and like pushing through, that's somehow humbling. Some people talk about nature being humbling in that kind of sense, where you kind of see something really powerful, like the ocean, like if you go surfing and you realize there's something much more powerful than you. That's also honest, that there's no way to, that you're just like the speck. That kind of puts you in the right scale of where you are in this world. And jiu-jitsu does that better than anything else for me.
We should say it's only within its frame is it truly the kind of the final right answer to all the problems it solves. Because if you just put jiu-jitsu into an MMA frame or a total self-defense frame, then there's a lot of unpleasant surprises to discover there, right? Like somebody who thinks all you need is jiu-jitsu to win the UFC gets punched in the face a lot, even from even on the ground. So it's and then you bring weapons in. It's like when you talk to jiu-jitsu people about knife defense and self-defense, right? Like that opens the door to certain kinds of delusions. But the analogy to martial arts is fascinating because on the other side, we have endless testimony now of fake martial arts that don't seem to know they're fake and are as I mean, they're impossibly delusional. I mean, there's a great video of Joe Rogan watching some of these videos because people send them to him all the time. But like literally, there are people who clearly believe in magic, where the master isn't even touching the students and they're flopping over. So there's this kind of shared delusion, which you would think maybe is just a performance and it's all a kind of elaborate fraud. But there are cases where the people, I mean, there's one fairly famous case, if you're a connoisseur of this madness, where this older martial artist who you saw flipping his students endlessly by magic without touching them, issued a challenge to the wide world of martial artists, and someone showed up and just punched him in the face until it was over. Clearly, he believed his own publicity at some point, right? And so it's this amazing metaphor. It seems, again, it should be impossible, but if that's possible, nothing we see under the guise of religion or political bias or even scientific bias should be surprising to us. I mean, it's so easy to see the work that cognitive bias is doing for people when you can get someone who is ready to issue a challenge to the world, who thinks he's got magic powers.
Yeah, that's human nature on clear display.